Fight Mike here. Today we're going to be recapping the UFC Fight Night that took place earlier today, headlined by Robert Whittaker and Reiner De Ridder. Jumping off with the early prelim opener, we got Martin Buday versus Marcus Buchecha. Good fight. I picked Marcus Buchecha like everyone else by first round submission, but Martin Buday does it again. 6-1, maybe even 7-1 in the UFC at the moment. Bro's got like if you watch him fight, you never think that he's got such a good record, but he's actually become like a good prospect in the UFC's heavyweight division. But round by round, it was pretty close-ish fight. Round one, definitely Buday had the edge in that round. Buchecha was shooting a lot of takedowns. A lot of them were getting stuffed as well. Buday was sprawling the takedowns really well. Buchecha wasn't really using his hands, though, to set up the takedowns. There was only he would feint the level change and then shoot straight after it. There wasn't really any sort of setup or game plan to how he was actually going to get Buday to the ground. It almost just seemed like he just expected to topple over Buday, which honestly a lot of people did expect. But round one was a pretty close round. Buchecha swung wild shots at the end of the round, but he didn't really land anything of value. It was definitely a Buday round. Round two was another close round, probably lean it towards Buchecha. He scored a takedown, controlled from half guard for a bit of the round, threatened a Kimura, landed some good ground and pound whilst Buday was trying to stand up. And it was a pretty dull-ish round, but he still definitely won the round, in my opinion. Round three, Buday started much faster. He looked a lot less tired than Buchecha. Buchecha, all the muscle on him, you could tell he was starting to slow it down. The explosion was really dipping on him. But Buday's boxing looked really sharp in that third round. He was sprawling, brawling. His right hand was not missing the entire time. And the thing is in this fight that Buchecha's striking at this point isn't dangerous enough to where people fear his hands at all. So they can kind of just spend the entire time just thinking about his wrestling. If he wants to crack into that top 15, he needs to develop some hands that people are actually scared of so that he can do some high-low feinting and actually draw out a bad shot so that you can make actually have a good takedown. It just seems that his only resort is to go to the takedown. So I think he definitely needs to improve that. But Buday did a fantastic job in this fight. I've never seen Buday really come up against someone who really presses the wrestling. So we haven't really seen his takedown defense. But it looked fantastic. His takedown defense was great. And he just had the superior boxing skills throughout the entire fight. He was always the faster fighter on the feet. He was always landing at a higher clip. He was quite composed on the ground as well. He reversed multiple positions. And he was landing some pretty hard, meaningful strikes throughout the whole fight. Whereas Buchecha landed a couple of rabbit punches, but nothing of real value. The other thing about Buchecha is that he looked completely spent by round three. You could just tell that he's not been experienced with having these fights against people at this level. Because otherwise his gas tank would have been able to come through it. But Buday, obviously, just a more well-rounded, more developed guy within their career. I think UFC newcomers like Buchecha need to have a development fight or two, like a patchy mix. They should be having someone who's just outside the rankings, I think, just for their first fight, to just see if they're even ranked level, ranked worthy. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Muhammad Yahya versus Stephen Nguyen. I think that they were saying that every country that you go to that has this last name is said completely differently, so don't come at me because I'm saying it wrong. But this was a crazy fight. I thought it should have been stopped in the first round, to be honest, because Muhammad Yahya was absolutely getting smashed. But in the first round, it was a very, very crazy fight. He immediately gets dropped by Nguyen. It was crazy. He was sprinting in. He does every time. The one thing about Muhammad Yahya, before I get started, that I have to say is before he throws a kick, he does a little trot forward. You can see it literally 2 seconds before he kicks. You can tell that he's about to throw a low kick. He needs to never do that again. And in the first exchange of the fight, he gets dropped doing that exact same thing. And Nguyen swarms Muhammad Yahya, but Yahya somehow survives that. First drop of the night. But Yahya gets dropped by a check left hook as well. Didn't look very powerful straight after. And Nguyen's hand speed just looked miles ahead of Yahya's. Yahya throws these little pitter-patter WMMA punches that just don't look really good at all. And Muhammad Yahya's offense is too sloppy to actually damage you. He does really long running before punches, and when he punches, he's always like leaning back, avoiding getting hit. So then naturally, whilst he's leaning back, punching, he gets dropped with an overhand right in the first round. This is drop like number 3. At this point, I'm already thinking that the ref should stop it. So, naturally, as Muhammad Yahya is getting smashed to pieces, he throws a flying knee, getting dropped the 4th time by a clean left hook. 2nd time he's been dropped by a left hook. All in the first round, by the way. And then he gets up, shoots a takedown, which is a good idea. Nguyen comes straight back up. Muhammad Yahya throws in the 3rd flying knee of the fight. Mind me, it's the 3rd one that missed. Then gets hit with the 4th left hook of the fight. The 4th one that dropped him too. And then, final 10 seconds, an overhand right flatlines Muhammad Yahya. But then he survives to round 2 somehow. So he gets dropped like 5 times in the first round. The ref just doesn't stop him. He has absolutely 0 moments of success in the round. Round 2 comes around. Yahya rocks Nguyen really like quickly into the round. It was actually shocking. It looked like the most unskilled punch I've ever seen. I think Nguyen just assumed that he could never get hurt by a punch from Muhammad Yahya. But then, so he hurts Nguyen, has like a brief momentum shift, and then he just gets dropped with the 5th check left hook. I don't know whether his left hand just is glued to his waist, but like he got dropped with every left hook that was thrown in this fight. But Nguyen mounts and starts ground and pounding Muhammad Yahya, throwing elbows. He balloons up Muhammad Yahya's eye. Yahya survives again for like the 6th time getting dropped. He works his way back into the round and then gets dropped yet again at the end of the round. And then the eye damage started to appear. He gets dropped really badly, and then the ref stops it beautifully in between rounds. We should have seen it stopped much sooner. But Nguyen had a good performance. We know Muhammad Yahya is not the best when it comes to offense or defense, but Nguyen showed that he's pretty sharp. He's got some nice tight hooks, especially the left hook. He's quite fast as well. He's patient, but still aggressive. He picks his shots pretty well. And he's got pretty good timing on his counters, and he was constantly punishing Yahya for his predictable entries. Sorry, again, this is like the 5th video in a row that I'm doing this, but I'm so sorry, but Yahya's toughness was really impressive in this fight. It's not going to be sustainable throughout his career, but the ref just literally left it on way too long. After the 2nd time that Muhammad Yahya got dropped, this fight could have been called very easily. I would prefer to watch an early stoppage than watch this fight, knowing that Muhammad Yahya is not going to be able to do things in the future just because of this one fight. I think Muhammad Yahya as well, we know he's not the most skilled guy, but it really showed this fight. Seeing him do all these spinning moves, all of these flying knees, it just exposes that he's trying to be too technical without being technical, if you know what I mean. But it was an entertaining performance, much not like this one. Ibo Aslan versus Billy Elikana, the worst fight of the card, very easily. Round 1, super hesitant, both fainting at range. Elikana threw a few more kicks. Seemed a little bit wary of Aslan's power, but Aslan did absolutely nothing. Late takedown attempt by Elikana as well, but that activity was minimal. There was literally nothing happening in the round. Elikana probably wins it off a couple of kicks though. Round 2 was even more active, both doing even more feinting. There was no commitments to any punches in the round. Aslan was moving forward though, but throwing nothing meaningful, maybe a jab every now and then. Elikana at least tossed a kick every 30-ish seconds, but it was just a staring contest with low volume. It was hard to score, but Elikana, I feel like, edged the round again. Round 3 was the exact same pattern, same feints, almost no strikes again, but both started smiling in the middle of the fight for no reason. It was like that smile that people do when they're in an absolute war, but it was such a disappointing sight to see that. Two guys who were absolutely not throwing anything, smiling at each other like they're in the middle of a back and forth war. But Elikana hurts Aslan with 2 minutes left and then lets him recover for a full minute afterwards. Deadass not throwing a single strike in that minute. And then the fight ends with barely any exchanges. What won the fight for Elikana? I think it was a couple of extra body kicks and leg kicks. He had a little bit better composure in the fight. And Aslan just had zero urgency throughout the fight. It was such a dull fight. It was the least eventful on the card. Aslan looked so mentally stuck. I think after getting finished by Ion Kutalaba that he just couldn't pull the trigger anymore. But Elikana, even though he won, he didn't show anything to suggest that he's going to become a rising prospect. It seemed like smiling mid-fight. It seemed like he was wanting to get into a brawl, but they were just fainting at range. Even though Elikana did enough to win, he just won't win any fans over for this. Pardon me. Both guys seriously need to work on offensive urgency because this is not going to get them far in the UFC. If either guy didn't feel like they needed to step on the pedal in the last minute, then they both need to work on some things. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Amanda Ribas versus Tabitha Ricci. Round by round, this was actually a pretty fun fight for the 2 rounds it was on. Ricci opened up with some early takedown attempts. She did a nice hip toss briefly. Ribas did a nice hip toss briefly, getting Ricci down. Ricci popped back up, pressed Ribas to the cage, showing some physical strength advantages. Clinched up for the rest of the round. Ricci came out more aggressive for round 2, pressuring early. Looked more faster and physical than Ribas in the fight. Got back to the clinch, landing some pretty heavy knees, and then landed a beautiful elbow, folding Ribas against the cage, dropping her instantly, swarming her with ground and pound, getting the TKO win. But Ricci looked great in this fight. She had a really strong clinch game, and the damage was actually happening. Usually in her fights, you can watch her fight, and there's basically not even a scratch by the end of it, but she was trying to inflict some damage. She improved her finishing ability, not just her controls. She's adding a lot of violence to her. And this is the best she's looked. This is the most aggressive, the strongest, the most dangerous she's looked. But one thing about Ribas is that she's always been very talented, but she's showing a bit of fragility under pressure now, fight to fight. We've seen that the physicality when she's fighting people, it's clear that she's getting out-muscled and out-hustled in her fights. Ribas' durability has got to be a question from now on. She's been finished a fair few times, and now she's getting finished easier and easier. So I think we need to put this as a bit of a question with the next fight moving forward. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Davy Grant versus Damon Blackshear. This was a close fight, though. It was a 29-28 decision for Davy Grant. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yet again. This was a good fight, though. Damon Blackshear had a very good performance. Damon Blackshear had a very good performance at the start of the fight, but Davy Grant pulled it back towards the end. Damon Blackshear got some early takedowns, and he controlled the first round, basically doing no damage, but he held Davy Grant down. Coming into round 2, though, Davy Grant's corner gave him some pretty good advice to just stop kicking and do all his work in the boxing. And he'd made a really nice adjustment. He focused on the body shots, some crisp boxing combinations. He landed several right hooks to the body, which I think changed the fight. And he was sprawling all the takedowns from then to the rest of the fight. But round 2 and 3 looked very similar. Davy Grant was the much fitter fighter. He was landing the better combinations. That right hook to the body looked fantastic throughout the fight. And he was just able to make the adjustment in the middle of the fight. And Damon Blackshear just couldn't make that same adjustment. The bodywork and the pressure wore on Blackshear as the fight went along. And then Davy Grant just looked the much sharper fighter in round 2 and 3. The solid takedown defense started showing up once he sort of had the timing on Damon Blackshear. And as always, he showed his veteran fight IQ. He's always been known to be a guy that can adapt after round 1, and he definitely showed it in this fight. And even though Blackshear had some early success, there was no plan B once the takedown stopped working. I think Grant's pressure boxing in the last 2 rounds definitely carried him to a victory in this one. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Muslim Salikov versus Carlos Leal. This was an absolutely fantastic performance from Salikov. Round 1, Leal came pressuring hard, as always, with wild offense but no defense. Charged in recklessly, feinting a few times, got grazed by a few counters, and then on his 3rd or 4th reckless entry, Salikov just dropped the hammer, landing a beautiful right hook counter, and it dropped Leal, sleeping him out cold instantly. Oh, my nose is so itchy. This is terribly annoying. I don't want to re-record this for the 2nd or 3rd time. I'm so sorry. My nose is so itchy for no reason, but Leal's hands looked really low, as per usual. If you've watched Leal fights, you know that he's very much sort of just has a disdain for defense. He never moves his head, and he just has this sort of offense. But Salikov had a fantastic win. He had a clinical finish. Liao's hands, although they were very low, his head was upright, and he got made to pay for that by Salikov, and he just landed the perfect right-hand counter and just slept Carlos Liao out cold. And we all knew that Liao was not the best at his defense, but Liao looked like he thought he was fighting Alex Morono again. And it turns out the Kung Fu King does not need power when you run into him chin first. Salikov showed some calculated patience, and he exploited Liao's zero regard for defense. Salikov doesn't always have knockout power as well. His timing, though, seemed to be getting better as he gets older. I don't know how, but Liao needs to drastically change his approach, or this will continue to keep happening. Fight in and fight out. Moving on to the next fight, then we've got Bryce Mitchell versus Said Nurmagomedov. Said started very fast. He threw a variety of kicks. He was countering Bryce with some sharp hooks as he was entering. And then he ended up dropping Bryce in the first round with a beautiful knee. But Bryce was able to work back into the fight. He, in the second and third rounds, did a lot of cage work, a lot of clinch work. He almost got guillotined during the fight, but he was able to pass through the guards of Said and survive those positions. He worked on the Kimura, worked on the arm triangle at different points, and he sort of just out-controlled Said for those second and third rounds, making sure that he could get the win for himself. And he positionally out-grappled him every step of the way. Bryce was always one step ahead. Said's cardio issues showed badly again. He's a very fast starter, but he always fades towards the end, and Bryce was able to capitalize on that very well. And Bryce, moving down in weight class, he showed some underrated strength for the division, and he showed some composure after getting dropped in that first round. Said had some brief moments on the feet, but he was just completely outmatched in those grappling exchanges as the fight went along. It was a really good performance from Bryce Mitchell. Moving on, though, to the next fight, we got Nikita Krylov versus Bogdan Guskov. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, but round one was a very close round. I'm so stupid. I don't know why it was said it was a close round. It got finished by KO in the first round, but Guskov had a very good performance. Krylov started out a little bit more reserved than he was in the Uraeus fight. He was throwing a lot of kicks early. He wasn't overextending that much. Guskov was pressing forward, but with his hands down, I was a little bit worried for him because Krylov was throwing some sharp kicks early on. But you could tell Guskov was clearly looking for the counter. He was backing up with his right hand loaded, and then Krylov threw a leg kick, just a naked leg kick, a little bit too close, and Guskov was able to time it with a perfect right-hand counter, sitting Krylov down, landing some follow-up shots, finishing him via brutal KO due to ground and pound a bit after. And Guskov looked the much more composed fighter out of the two. He timed Krylov's rhythm and punished the kick entry. He was highly aware of what Krylov was doing to enter, and he relied on the counter setup, executing it absolutely perfectly. It was a really tough loss for Krylov. We've seen him lose recently by KO, and his durability was already in question before this fight. He'll likely need a long layoff after this as well. Guskov looked really sharp in it. He was really powerful, he was calculated, he was creative, and you could tell he was confident in his ability to finish Krylov in this. He set up the traps in the open stance with the hands low, inviting the kick for a counter, and getting a nasty highlight reel KO against Krylov. Again, the second highlight reel KO that Krylov's been on the rear end of this year. It is a big shame, but good performance from Guskov. Moving on to the second most boring fight on this card, it was Asu Almabayev versus Jose Ochoa. This was such a boring fight round by round. Round by round, Asu shoots instantly in the fight. Jose was defending really well as the fight started, but it got to about 2 minutes of them sort of just defending of Ochoa defending the wrestling against the cage. They would get back at range every now and then, and Asu would land maybe one shot and then start shooting again. And this happened for 3 straight rounds. Every round was quite similar. There were times where Ochoa would defend the takedowns 3, 4, 5 times in a row, but Asu would just do nothing but shoot straight after. It was really a weird performance from Asu. He wanted nothing to do with the striking and would just relentlessly shoot takedowns and chain wrestle takedowns together. He used a lot of cage pressure. As soon as he would get separated, he would shoot back in with another takedown. It was a real Mario Bautista versus Jose Aldo performance. It sort of just looked like he was terrified of Jose Ochoa on the feet. He looked very jittery, and Ochoa clearly outdamaged him in the fight. I can remember 3 overhands that Asu Almabayev landed, and that was the only things I can picture him landing. It was not a fantastic performance from him. He really didn't do enough in the fight, but just winning by the skin of his teeth. He won literally only on control time, so it was not a good performance for him if he wants to gain some fans. Moving on to the next one, though, we've got Shariputdin Magomedov versus Marc-Andre Barriault. This was a crazy fight. Shara started fast. He was throwing leg kicks. He destroyed Mark's leg early on. Mark got a takedown. Shara uses the cage to get back up. He was absolutely disgusting. This happened multiple times in the fight. Round 2 was a close round. It was, especially at the start, Mark started off swinging early in the round, but Shara looked pretty sharp off the back foot, cutting Mark with a lead elbow. And then randomly, Marc-Andre Barriault throws a right hand as Shara Bullet's coming in and just breaks Shara's nose into multiple pieces. You can see it's literally sandwiched that nose. Mark starts landing some body shots. He really hurt Shara with that broken nose, and then starts teeing off on him on the clinch. But towards the end of the round, Shara actually hurts him back with an elbow and some knees. And in the last 20 seconds, almost finishing Mark. But third round, Mark was looking to work out in the clinch. He was visibly fatigued at the start of the round, but Shara stayed on the outside. He didn't really do too much in the first 2 minutes, and then the last 2 to 3 minutes, he started swinging a lot more, kneeing in the clinch a lot more, and then he started trying to flying knee him on Marc-Andre's timing for the clinch, winning the third round, making it a 29-28 or 30-27 decision, however what you want to give it. But Shara looks pretty good in this fight. The leg kicks early disrupted Mark's base. He had superior range management, Shara did. He had nice teeps, side kicks, knees as well. The clinch, knees and elbows were really good as well. And I was quite impressed. He stayed really composed after his nose got shattered. You've seen guys, even guys like Nicholas Dalby, even though he fought well after his broken nose, you could see he was really thinking about it. Whereas after the initial pain, Shara Magomedov was not really thinking about it for the rest of the fight. It was more impressive than Sean Strickland against DDP. But round 2 and 3, I think Shara was able to steal the momentum throughout both rounds. And although Mark had some solid moments, he just struggled stylistically because he's not very fast. And after his leg got deadened by Shara's kicking, it just seemed that his boxing was not fast enough to catch Shara. But even then, Shara's boxing does look like a liability still. I think that if you can move Shara backwards and you can string together a long combination, you will catch him with one of them. But Mark just couldn't because his leg was compromised throughout basically the whole fight. But moving on to the next fight, we've got Marcus McGhee versus Petr Yan. Round 1, very close round. McGhee slightly outlanded it. We all kind of knew he would outland him in that round. There was basically no kicks from Petr Yan. I think he broke his foot in the first round, but I could be just Joe Roganing that one. But round 2, McGhee looked great for the first 2 minutes, outlanding Petr Yan, but then got cracked at about 3 minutes 20 through the round by a beautiful 1-2 combination by Petr Yan. And then from there, that changed the point of the fight where Petr Yan from there just knew he could hurt Marcus McGhee, and he was tagging him, backing him up for the rest of the second round. Early round 2, it looked much the same. He was really pushing McGhee backwards. He was tagging him hard. And then for the last 2-ish minutes, he held cage control, kneeing the thigh, learnt some stuff from Arab there, landing some clinch uppercuts once he escaped that point, but just outworking Marcus McGhee in those second and third rounds. But Petr Yan looked the much more accurate fighter. He was much more efficient. He was landing very clean after rocking McGhee, and he was just exiting the pocket really well, not getting caught too much by Marcus McGhee's shots, and if he did, it was once he was already slipping and ripping. His clinch control and his cage pressure looked really good. And McGhee just sort of lost power after round 2. They both started off really stiff as well. I don't know if you noticed this in round 1. They both looked stiff as a board. But McGhee just faded way too much in round 3, and he just couldn't win the round back. And once Yan was able to push him back consistently, he was just landing one after the other. He's so crafty. He just can continue to land. But I'm just confused where all the kicks are. And again, another person I'm confused where all the kicks are, Robert Whittaker versus Reiner De Ridder. This was actually a pretty fun fight. It was really scrappy. At times it looked low level just because of how tired they were. I'm so sorry. This is like the 10th time I've scratched my nose and sneezed, but I have to do it. But round one of this fight was a pretty close round. Robert Whittaker, I think, had the lead in that round. He was landing some sharp jabs. He was feinting on RDR. RDR did land a big step-in knee, and instantly into the fight, he sort of had wrist control. I don't know if he was grabbing the gloves. It kind of looked like it, but he had wrist control, and he was just kneeing the body of Whittaker straight away. He probably could have landed about 12 knees to the body on Robert Whittaker in this fight, which was really impressive. Round two, Whittaker defended early takedowns, landed some jabs, but then RDR's southpaw jab started landing like midway through the round, bloodying the nose up of Whittaker, and you could tell Whittaker was starting to get tired from all those knees to the body and all the clinches. It was sort of like a clear RDR round in that one, and RDR was able to get Robert down and actually hold him on the ground for the rest of the round. Round three, RDR started aggressive. I think he thought that Rob was fading, but then he got just caught with a massive overhand right. Whittaker ground and pounds and was so close to the finish. I was literally standing up yelling in my room, but it was 7 a.m. so I couldn't scream to the top of my lungs like usual. But RDR ended up recovering and scoring a takedown soon after getting up, securing top position, but competitive round with Whittaker definitely winning due to dropping him. Round four, though, was another very, very close round, but I would have given it to RDR just from forward pressure and cage control. He was doing a lot of clinching in this round, a lot of kneeing to the body, and lots of body punches as well. I think the biggest thing about this fight was that Rob just looked super fatigued in those last two rounds. That was what lost him those two rounds, really, because they were bless me, sorry. They were landing very similar in those last two rounds, but RDR seemed to be landing the shots that were actually having an effect on Whittaker. In the fifth round, another very close round. I actually rewatched that round. It was literally razor close, but both looked visibly very fatigued. And Whittaker moved backwards for the majority of the round. And he got pushed up against the cage for such a long time of the round. It would be one after the other. Every exchange that RDR would have, every one of them had a clinch in them. He wasn't trying to strike with Whittaker at all in that last round, and that made Whittaker very hesitant to throw. And even though he defended a lot of the takedowns, he just couldn't throw anything of value to sort of win him the rounds. So he just lost those last two rounds and ended up losing by a split decision. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. But what won the fight, though, for De Ridder, I think it was just all the relentless clinch pressure. Constantly body shotting, constantly kneeing to the body. The southpaw jab as well was interrupting Rob's rhythm. The cage control was really hurting him. And he got hurt in round three, but he was just recovering very well. And he made sure to just continually make Robert Whittaker work throughout the entire fight. He had a very smart setup as well. He would constantly jab Whittaker down to the back of the cage. And then from that point, he would either shoot for a takedown, shoot for the clinch, or he would just go for a knee. A really nasty step-in knee that he would always go for. The same one that he finished Bo Nickel with. But I want to talk about the grabbing the gloves. I thought that RDR grabbed the gloves and stopped himself from getting finished in that third round. I was really annoyed about that. And he did grab the gloves as well at separate points on the cage, but I'm not too mad about those. I don't think that those really changed the course of the fight. But I really think that this was Whittaker's fight to win. I think he missed all of his chances, and he was like letting RDR off bottom. He was hesitant off separation. He was constantly checking the clock as well. And the thing is that we've seen Whittaker fight many times before, but we've never seen him just box for 5 rounds. He'll at least stomp the leg. He'll at least throw a leg kick. He'll at least teep to the body. This fight, he genuinely boxed to the head, and that's it. No leg kicks, no body shots, no teeps to the body. I just don't understand. Like, I understand that maybe he saw the knee coming up and thought, oh, maybe I can't hit the body that easily. But he should have been throwing that teep to keep him away from him. His game plan this whole night should have been using his jab, using his two, using his teep, using his stomp, all of his range, using his leg kick, all of his range weapons, he should have been using constantly throughout the fight. Because we saw as soon as they got really close, RDR would just crash in and then end up in the clinch working Whittaker with just punches to the bodies. There was no intercepting shots from Whittaker. He wasn't trying to time De Ridder at any point. He should have almost mirrored his sort of style that he fought against Romero with, where he was using so many tools. And I think he could have won, like he would have won if he did that. It was such a close fight with 2 rounds clearly going to Whittaker. All he needed was in those 3rd and 4th rounds to throw some teeps to the bodies, throw some stomps to the legs. Like he genuinely, I can't remember him throwing any kicks apart from 2 head kicks throughout the fight, and they were both slow as. Maybe we're seeing the start of a non-prime Whittaker era. I know I'm saying this just after he's lost, but have you ever seen a Whittaker fight where he genuinely doesn't kick at all in his fight? Like, he used no body kicks. He punched the body 3 times, and they're all in the last round. It was just a weird performance from Whittaker. I know that he got hurt more in the body than he ever has in his entire career, but it was still an odd performance. I thought he could have done a bit more with it, but let me know what you thought of the fight card as a whole, what you thought of the fights themselves. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. And as always, if you enjoyed it, I'll catch you next time. Peace.